Hi, and welcome to Cloud Tech Cover. Today I'm joined by Martin Sawicki. Martin, could you tell us a little bit about where you work at Microsoft and sort of the things you focus on?
Right. I'm a program manager. My focus is on Windows Azure and Java. I work at the Microsoft Open Technologies, a subsidiary of Microsoft. We kind of specialize in working with communities and sort of outside open source projects. Right. We build bridges. We're mostly engineers who basically ship code and also work on standards, things like that. Okay. And my focus has been largely on sort of tooling and other things related to Java and Windows Azure.
Okay, so what kind of tooling do you actually work with or work on for Azure?
So I specifically, I've been running a project which is basically we're creating tools for Eclipse for Java. We're also doing some Jenkins work and some other sort of open source things which basically help developers deploy or work with Java on Windows Azure.
Okay, well you can treat me as being someone that rarely fires up Eclipse or has used this tooling, so perhaps today you mentioned you're going to give us a bit of an overview of where a developer that wants to use Java on Azure can get started.
Right.
Chris is already basically an expert in that space, but consider me a noob, so all of those other people out there that want to learn how to sort of get started with Java on Azure, I guess this is the show to do that. So,
right.
But what have you got sort of planned?
I want to sort of first start off by showing you the main kind of Java Dev Center. A lot of people, when they hear about Java and Microsoft in the same sentence, it just doesn't really fit because for reasons that we all understand. We've done a lot of work across MS OpenText, also Windows Azure. Basically enabling Java on Windows Azure. There's a bunch of SDKs, APIs, there's a bunch of stuff that's out there. So what I really want to start off is by showing you sort of the main portal, the Java Developer Center on Windows Azure. And pretty much everything that I'm talking about and everything that I'm not even going to cover is here. Okay. We've got technical library for Java developers. We've got more documentation on the Eclipse plugin that I work on. Right. We've got a bunch of tutorials and basically a lot of guidance. Everything that you need to know is somehow, you can find it somehow on this portal. And
these are all on the right-hand side there. We've got reference docs as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So so I kind of want to cover the breadth of our Java coverage first before we go a little bit deeper into what I work on specifically. Yep. Okay. Java is not really Java on Azure is not very familiar. It's not a familiar topic to a lot of people. So I kind of want to make sure that we at least have an understanding of the breadth here. Okay. So there's starting with the Windows Azure Developer Center. You can basically find a whole bunch of things that you can do with Java. I think of this as 3 buckets. One bucket is the kinds of things that you can do with Java without even deploying your applications to Windows Azure. Right. So basically taking advantage of Windows Azure services, whether it's storage or service bus or media or whatever, in your own Java programs, regardless of where they run. Right. That's sort of one bucket of things. Another bucket is if you want to get started with putting your applications on Windows Azure, then one easy place to get started with is the Windows Azure virtual machines. You just start them up. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then if you want to get a little bit more fancy in a way, if you want to get really full advantage of the power of Windows Azure, the scalability and all that, then you want to look at Windows Azure Platform as a Service, cloud services, and I'm going to talk about the tooling that we offer to make that easier. Okay. So starting with the first bucket, the SDKs. So you will find the Azure SDK on this website, and basically I'll just show you the developer documentation for it. So it's a library of APIs. It's a growing thing that Windows Azure SDK is working on this, and so you can already use storage. You can already call into media and sort of service bus. So basically, you can take advantage of these services within your applications. You don't have to deploy them to Windows Azure. You just you can do this from the outside.
So an example there may be if I'm if I've got some kind of solution that I'm building on-prem, it may perhaps be just a Java app that runs locally on a client machine, but you want a messaging solution to another enterprise. For example,
you could storage, or you want to put your storage somewhere out there in the cloud, but you're not ready to move your application to the cloud. There's a whole bunch of applications in that space, and the SDK is basically increasing in its breadth.
So the client API is the best place for people to start for that kind of scenario.
I think that'd be the easiest, definitely. Okay. And I'm going to come back to this bucket later when I talk about Eclipse, because Eclipse also makes some things easier in this space. But let's kind of switch over to the next bucket now. which is IIS. So let's say you're already ready to start playing with Windows Azure with your applications on Windows Azure. So recently, we've had a bunch of work. That we've done together with Oracle. You may have heard, a lot of people may have heard about our new partnership with Oracle. This is the main landing page for that partnership. You can get started with some basic tutorials here, but really the main idea is that you can use Oracle software, WebLogic, just plain Java, also Oracle database on Windows Azure today in virtual machines. This offering is in preview, so it's not yet supported. It's not yet. The billing is only for your Windows machines. We're not really billing for the Oracle software yet. But you can get started with that. There's a simple tutorial here, and if you want to sort of learn more about how to run Oracle software on Windows Azure, we've also put out a bunch of documentation tutorials around these different images, and also this one miscellaneous considerations article. This is our evolving best practices article. We're still kind of early. We're still investigating. We're still learning about each other's technologies, but this is where you can find out about running the database on Windows Azure, running WebLogic, et cetera, et cetera.
So this, to get started with Oracle on Azure, is actually really quite straightforward, right?
Absolutely, and I'll just show you the portal, the Azure portal, and how you can just get a virtual machine started. So just new compute, you just start a machine just like any other, pick from a gallery, and you will see in this list, scroll down here, you're going to start seeing a whole bunch of images that my team put out in collaboration with Oracle. So these are all Oracle software images on top of Windows servers, starting with the most basic, just plain Java 7. Various variants of WebLogic and Oracle database. We also have Java 6, which is kind of an interesting offering, especially for developers who are not ready to switch to Java 7. By the virtue of being a Windows Azure customer, you have the privilege of actually getting the latest updates to Java 6. Java 6 has end of life, so Windows Azure customers have access to more recent updates to Java 6.
Sorry, are these Oracle images just like a vanilla install, or are they customized?
No. They're vanilla installs. Vanilla installs. And Oracle has also published a number of images with their software, which they maintain on top of Linux. They have Oracle Linux, so these are the images that Oracle is the publisher of.
Excellent.
So, and it's really easy to get started. I won't even get to into that, but you can find out more in the tutorials. That's probably the easiest way to get started running your applications on Windows Azure. Yeah,
but basically 6 to 10 minutes, right? From clicking, you click through this, and in that amount of time, you can RDP into the machine and do whatever you want.
Exactly, and the tutorials that I mentioned earlier are going to help you basically just get started.
Okay.
So, and that third bucket that I wanted to talk about is Windows Azure Pass. That's kind of, that part is sort of dearest to my heart, simply because I spend a lot of time working on the Eclipse tooling. So I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper on that one. So first of all, and again, just starting with the documentation, you can find all of our documentation, and going back to the Java Dev Center. If you just go here, plugin for Eclipse, that will point you at all the tutorials that we have. Assuming the connectivity is fast enough here, right? So anyway, so I'll just show you a very quick overview of the actual tool. So this is Eclipse. And I realize you're not too familiar with it, so it's like, okay, I might as well be showing you, I don't know, some other software, but trust me, this is Eclipse.
That's fine.
And let me just start off. Let's say I already have a Java application. It's not really Windows Azure specific, it's just a plain vanilla Java application that I'm running somewhere. This particular Java application doesn't really do anything interesting. It's just a hello world kind of an example. And just to show you what it does, without really involving Azure yet, I'll just run it locally. And this will just run on my local Tomcat server. So I'll just say, okay, Tomcat. I'm just using standard Eclipse functionality. I'm not doing anything special yet. I just want to show you what this does. So we're going to see a web page, and basically there's nothing really special about it, but it's a web page with some Java code in it.
Manners 101.
I'm
getting schooled here.
I'm not trying to be subtle or anything. Let's see. So let's say that you're ready to start playing with this application and kind of starting to thinking about deploying it to Windows Azure. So first of all, you need to get our plugin, and you can get that from this special download location. Eclipse understands how to download these things once you provide the special URL. So our URL is here on dl.msopentech.com Eclipse.
Okay.
And when you go there, you'll basically see, well, I already have it installed, so it's not going to show me anything, but you're going to see
It'd
the
be
toolkit.
available there.
Right?
Okay.
So once you have it installed, you're going to see this toolbar here with a bunch of Azure-specific things from the plugin. So you could. So one thing that I need to do here is basically create a deployment project for this application, so that Azure understands how to deploy it within a cloud service. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new cloud service project, new deployment project. So I'll just give it some sort of a name.
So our base cloud service role, but essentially doesn't have anything related to Java installed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Right. So now, as part of the wizard, I get to specify what it is they want to use for the JDK, which is the Java runtime for developers. So, and because we support, Windows Azure supports emulator scenarios as well as cloud deployments, so you get to basically say, okay, in the emulator, I want to run this Java, and this happens to be my local JDK. And then I also get to say which JDK I want to deploy to Windows Azure.
Right.
So you can either deploy your own, which is basically we do some smarts and just kind of deploy your own JDK in an efficient way, or thanks to our recent partnership with Azul Systems, you can also use the Azul Zulu, which is an open JDK build for Windows Server, which is already available within Windows Azure. So that way you don't upload your own; you just use that one.
And
this is an open source community, open source project.
Okay.
So I'll just stick with this one. And then the next step is, because this is a Java application, we don't yet know where you want to run it. And in the Java world, you have a whole bunch of Java application servers to choose from. So this is where you get to choose your Java application server. So, and we support a number of different types of servers: Apache, Tomcat, Glassfish, JBoss, JD, different flavors. You need to just point us at your installation of that server. So I'll just go to my, and I pretty much have everything installed because I play with a lot of this stuff. So I'll just pick Tomcat, and then I'm going to deploy this Tomcat deployment, this Tomcat installation into my cloud. I could have also chosen to deploy it from a custom download. Let's say my team already agrees that, hey, we're going to use this distribution. Don't upload the one that you have on your machine. Just use this one. So there's another way of basically pointing everybody on your team at a consistent distribution. But I won't do that here. And then last thing is basically add the applications that I want to deploy. So by default, we include a Hello World application, which is just part of the project. You can remove that. And I want to add the application that I actually have, which is Hello Cloud Cover. So I can either reference it as a file, or I can just reference it directly from the workspace. And that way I'm basically adding a reference that's going to get built simultaneously on all that. So now I have these two applications that are going to be deployed, and now I'm basically finished with creating the deployment project. So the deployment project itself, I mean, I'm not going to get into the depth into the structure here too much, but it's a worker role based project. By default, there's a single worker role, and the plugin does all the plumbing underneath to make it all work.
So
at least in these basic
installs all
scenarios.
the prereqs as startup tasks.
Exactly. So so I'm going to run in the Windows Azure emulator first. This way, I can test the deployment logic kind of on my local machine. That's really the trickiest step. With this simple application, you're not going to find anything interesting, but real-world deployments presumably are going to have more complex things in it. So the emulator gives you a chance to test your deployment logic before you deploy it to the cloud and spend time waiting for it to start up. It also gives you a way to sort of see the error messages, which normally you wouldn't see in the cloud. So. So now we see basically a whole bunch of consoles popping up, and this is just Tomcat getting started. So now we see from Tomcat that it's working. So the way I can test this is just going to a local host, and first of all I'll just verify that the Tomcat web page is there, and then this is the application I'm deploying. So here's I've confirmed that the application is working on my machine here. Next, I want to deploy it to Windows Azure. So I go back here and I'm going to do publish to Windows Azure Cloud. We rely on the publish settings file, so presumably you've already downloaded that. If not, then you can download things. I already have mine configured, so it already knows about my subscription.
So publish settings basically, for people that aren't aware, that just contains your credentials to be able to call into the service management API, which orchestrates deployments like this.
So if you're doing this for the first time, you just click import from publish settings, and then you download the publish settings file from your subscription, and then just point at it. I get to basically choose all the different things for deploying, so the storage account, service name, things like that. I get to choose my target operating system. Let's just pick 2012. I can configure remote desktop at the same time if I want to. I'll leave this alone. And then just click publish, and in a few minutes we'll see this running. So while this is getting published, which takes a few minutes, let me give you a sort of an overview of what else is in the plugin other than this basic deployment functionality.
Yeah, well, first things first, you've made it really easy for Java developers to utilize Windows Azure. Just looking at this.
Getting started is really a big priority for us to make it super easy. So, and then once you want to start getting more sophisticated using different features, then you can access them by going to the properties of the different nodes, the project node and the work role node. So if we just do a quick tour, under the Windows Azure section, if we go to properties, these are sort of the fundamental properties that are that you can change on the project level. And really the interesting stuff is, you can enable remote desktop, add more roles if you want to, manage your subscriptions. The more interesting features are exposed on the individual roles. So if you go there with Windows Azure, if I just go to properties, we can navigate through all the different features here. At the basic level, machine size, number of instances, things like that. You can configure co-located caching. This takes advantage of Windows Azure caching. And
so this is the in-role caching?
Exactly. Now this is optimized for Java developers. Java developers generally use Memcached protocol, Memcached tooling. There's a library called Spy Memcached as an example of a library that talks to Memcached. So Windows Azure exposes that, so we help you configure that in your application. This is a more deployment-related feature, so I'll just skip that. Remote debugging. One of the cool things in Java that you can do fairly easily is enable remote debugging of your application. So, and we make that even simpler. So, if you want to basically do remote debugging of your code, we basically allow you to create debug configurations for Eclipse. This is just a standard way of doing this in Eclipse, and you can create a debug configuration for the emulator as well as for the cloud once you have it deployed.
That's pretty cool.
And then you just log in, just say start debugging, and you're there.
Similar experience to IntelliTrace style.
I'm not familiar enough with that.
Okay.
But it's you basically step through your code.
Okay, well that's really quite powerful, given that your deployment can be there, you just attach to it. You don't need to remote into the box, look at like event logs or anything like that, or install dev tools. It seems quite cool. What else have we got in there?
So other than that, some basic things, endpoint editing, environment variables. Now this is one of the apparently most popular features in the plugin.
Session affinity.
Exactly. You don't get that in Azure out of the box. But we've had huge demand for this feature from Java developers. So we do enable that very easily. It's literally a checkbox. You check it and you get session affinity, sticky sessions. And under the hood, we use ARR, IIS.
Oh, really? So you're just configuring a web farm there and enabling cloud affinity. Okay.
Exactly. And putting some code in there to enable scalability and all that. So
okay, that's really quite cool. Have you talked to the Visual Studio tooling team about this?
Not Visual Studio. We've worked with the AR team quite a bit, but I do see interesting questions every now and then on the internal Azure DLs. People saying, "Hey, we got this in Java. Are we going to get this in .NET too?"
Yeah, well, I'm sure most of our regular viewers will be now requesting for this. So it'd be worth talking to the Cloud Dev Tools team, Paul and Co. They're in the same building as us.
I know them quite well. But this is in the Java world. This is especially important. Such sticky sessions is just it's a very important feature. And then basic stuff, local storage. There's just Windows Azure local storage resources in case this is especially relevant for deployments that are really big, because the app root in Windows Azure, there's a fixed size to that. Recently it got a little bit bigger, but you still, if you have a large deployment, by default we put everything in the app root, but there is a way of using a local storage resource. If you need 4 gigabytes and not 1 gigabyte or whatever it is, then you can use one of these resources and then make your deployments arbitrarily large. It's
Right.
not going to fail because of size issues.
Okay.
And then this is another set of properties which basically looks very similar to what the original wizard looks like. So
Right.
this is basically a way for you to change the settings that you originally started out with. So you can change the JDK in the middle of your project.
All right.
You can deploy it to different servers. So this is one of the little cool things that I've partially implemented myself. Let's say that I don't want to use Tomcat anymore. I want to use Glassfish now. Let me just make sure that I pick the right Glassfish here. And it's just, from this point on, you're going to use Glassfish.
Okay.
And now if you're a Java developer, you know that doing this manually is fairly non-trivial because there's a different deployment model, et cetera, et cetera. But,
Right.
but we do that logic behind the scenes for you.
Okay, with a few button clicks, basically. Okay.
Literally,
Awesome.
right. So that just shows you that it's very easy to switch servers. In the meantime, let's go back to our cloud deployment. See how that's doing.
Okay.
It says it's published, so all I have to do to test it is just click on this hyperlink. Once it's published, it just takes you directly to the service, and you can see that it was published to a staging account by this cryptic URL, and you see Tomcat running. And this is Tomcat really running in the cloud in my application.
Excellent. Can we send a greeting? Is that why I don't
there is, let's see. Oops.
That's okay. Common typo in cloud cover name.
Yeah, he's just going to see cloud cover here, that's all.
Excellent.
So another thing that the Eclipse plugin, the Eclipse toolkit helps you with is creating or taking advantage of these Windows Azure services that I mentioned at the beginning. Even if you're not planning to deploy these applications to Windows Azure, I mean, regardless basically of whether you are or not.
Okay.
And so, for example, if we go back to my Java application, if you go to the build path, this is sort of the standard way in Eclipse to add references. Add library.
Right.
You will notice that there are a number of libraries that the Eclipse toolkit for Windows Azure, Windows Azure toolkit for Eclipse has installed. So one of them is the JDBC driver. This helps you work with Windows Azure SQL database from Java. Another one you can use easily is the Apache Cupid client. This is for taking advantage of the AMQP functionality in Windows Azure Service Bus.
Excellent.
This is the Windows Azure libraries for Java that I showed you before. You can also get them from the plugin as a library, self-contained, all in one because it's got a bunch of dependencies. And last here, this is a ACS filter, which basically enables you to do basically codeless authentication, enable codeless authentication for your application against
that always sounds good, codeless authentication, because
someday I'll be happy to do an in-depth demo of that. It really works.
We should do that.
In fact, I'll just give you a glimpse of the configuration screen. All you have to do is provide these three parameters from ACS, basically the ACS login page, URL, the URL of your server, and the public key that you're going to be using for the authentication. You need to configure the same thing on the ACS side.
Yes.
That's the handshake, and from that point on, it will automatically redirect unauthenticated requests to ACS. And once people are logged in using their Yahoo or whatever Gmail or Live ID, goes back to your application, and then your application can extract the claims from the request, and then you deal with the authorization part of it. But authentication is taken care of.
That's pretty nice.
Yep.
Excellent.
I'll be happy to do another session on that one. Just this one is pretty interesting.
Sounds pretty good.
So this is basically it in a nutshell, and I probably haven't done justice to all the other things that I haven't yet mentioned. There's a lot of people working on different parts of Java support on Windows Azure, so I just give you sort of a number of starting points. There's a lot more that you can find out from those tutorials and documentation.
Well, we'd certainly love to have you back on the show whenever your schedule allows for it. But yeah, this is great to really see. Like, I've been very much stuck in a VS world, but we've certainly got a very large Java audience as well. So I think it'd be great to keep doing this kind of thing when we can, and look at all the excellent tooling you're creating, because I had no idea it's actually you know, quite easy to do from Eclipse.
And you know, your reaction is actually typical. I think the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is just awareness.
Yeah.
You know, Java and Microsoft just, you know, the people don't make that association, so they don't realize just how easy and how powerful Java support is on Windows Azure.
So what other things are you working on in MS OpenTech? Just as a, you know, a breadth, what have we recently released out of MS OpenTech? Just so we know about these great tools.
Some other things that our group is working on. So I happen to specialize in Java, but there are other people who specialize in other languages, other platforms. There's a lot of phone related things that we've been doing. There are a lot of just Windows related things. HTML Labs, that's one of the main assets that we have. If you go to our MS OpenTech homepage,
can we see the link to that, just so people can go if they want to have a sort of poke around and see what else is out there?
Yeah, let's go back there.
All right, so msopenTech.com. Okay.
VM Depot is a great place for community created images for Windows Azure.
Yeah, this is excellent.
There's a whole bunch of Linux-based images out there, several hundred of those.
Yeah, and that's built right into the portal experience as well, so you can spin up a VM from the Depot gallery, and now it surfaces as a nice gallery dialog in.
Exactly. And there's a whole slew of projects, not just for non-Microsoft technologies. There are also some .NET projects that our group is engaged with. So you know, and we're looking deeply at DevOps, developer technologies, very developer oriented, of course.
Okay.
But there's, you know, if something is interesting in the open source world, we're probably already on it.
Okay, excellent.
All right.
Wow, yeah, quite a lot of information. Definitely a lot to absorb for the non-Java devs. For the Java devs, it's certainly excellent for them to see how they can get started with this. I certainly appreciate the amount of work that would have gone into making that tooling experience so easy. So thank you very much, Martin, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers that have an interest in this will say thank you as well.
My pleasure.
So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Bye.